Kyle, we have an emergency.
Is the studio on fire?
No, we have to record the podcast.
Kayla, that is not an emergency. We do that every week. But if this conversation sounds familiar to you, it's because we have a workplace crisis culture.
And today, we're diagnosing that crisis culture.
And you're going to learn how to be sustainably productive. Let's get into it. Kayla, before we dive into crisis culture, I do want to take a second to talk about some technology that I love.
I'll allow it.
Thank you. And that technology is Superhuman.
I'm familiar. I may love it too.
Well, I use Superhuman every day to help me write emails, structure important documents, put together presentations, and so much more. And it does it in a way that my work still sounds like me, not some language that clearly reads like AI.
What I love about it is that there is no learning curve to using it. You simply install it and it's there to help you. No opening a separate browser tab and having to go back in between tasks and tools. It truly helps you get things done faster.
And it's one productivity suite with the power of Grammarly, Mail, and Coda.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And it works alongside you, getting to know your writing style and learning your projects so you don't have to continually provide context. It just proactively provides suggestions as you work.
Unleash your superhuman potential with AI that meets you where you work. You can try Superhuman today for free at superhuman.com/podcast. That's superhuman.com/podcast. Kayla, workplace crisis culture. You just told me we had an emergency, but I don't think it was truly an emergency. Let's define what workplace crisis culture actually is.
Yeah, so to me, I think this idea of a workplace crisis culture basically means that everything is an emergency, right? Prioritization is non-existent because whatever comes on your desk is now the most important thing to be doing. Mm-hmm. Also, you're talking about short-term needs prioritized over long-term needs.
Mm-hmm. So it's this idea that basically everything feels very, very urgent.
Right.
Maybe at the same time, everything feels very, very important. Like you have to get it done now. Like do not delay. And so you're just kind of stuck on this hamster wheel of like exactly what you said. Thing comes to you, you have to finish it. Another thing comes to you, you have to finish it. And it kind of depletes your ability to do any sort of long-term thinking, strategic planning, have bandwidth to tackle bigger, more complicated projects.
Yeah, and I think it's really like it feels pretty endemic. Like I feel like a lot of basically everyone that I talk to talks about this culture in their workplace. So I guess like why do you think this is happening?
Yeah, let's start with the why. I think there's a few different reasons why this feels more endemic. Great vocab word.
Thanks.
We don't even play a game. We should maybe invent a game where we have to say a word.
Oh, we should come up with a word at the beginning. I really like that. That's fun.
We'll talk later. But endemic, I had to kudos you for that. I think there's several different whys behind this. The first, I think, is the ways of communicating. So if you go back, 30 years, it was like strictly email. Mm-hmm. And email feels a lot less urgent. Like I think the default assumption is that like an email should be responded to within 24 to 48 hours. Mm-hmm. And so I do think that the way we communicate affects our ability to process and affects how important and urgent we think things are. Now we have a Slack culture, which is much more like instant messaging. And it feels like if you're not responding to a Slack within 10 minutes, 5 minutes, it does feel like you're behind. Whether that is true or not, that's the feeling. Like if you waited 48 hours to respond to a Slack, someone would be like, did you like go to the ER?
Yeah, like what happened here?
Whoa, this takes too long. So I definitely think one is the way of communicating at work has changed and the new tools we have make it feel like everything is urgent and important.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think especially when we're talking about Slacks, like there's been times where it's been like 3 hours and I haven't responded to a Slack and I'm like, oh no.
Someone like double pings you like.
Oh, like just following up on this. I'm like, shoot, God, I'm the biggest idiot in the world. And it's like not that big of a deal, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, can you pull this number for me? Like they don't need it, you know?
And it truly like the other person could have the best intentions and be like, I don't need this right away. Yeah. But I just think it's like the like quality, the type of communication that Slack has makes things feel sometimes like very, very important and urgent when they might not be. The second thing I think that's contributing to this is the ability to take home work. Yeah. And again, before you're in an office, you have a desktop computer, you're not unplugging that thing, putting it in the Range Rover and driving home and then plugging it back at home. Right. Now you have a laptop. Like, when I started at Morning Brew, I just had a work laptop that I also used personally. So like, don't tell IT that. It's changed now. But like, that ability to take your work home and like the blurring of lines between work and home life, I think was exacerbated by COVID. I think that also allows you to feel like everything can be urgent, everything can be important because I can do it after hours.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I also, it's just like, okay, this is stuff that we've already talked about, right? Like we've already talked about the fact that we can't have effective boundaries at work. We've already talked about the fact that every ping, takes 23 minutes to get back to full focus after you receive it. And so like we're getting constant pings, so we're never focused. But I think like there's this, it's not just like the Slack that's the problem. It's not just taking your work home that's the problem, because I think with the right boss and with the right management, that can be kind of like avoided. And so I have seen it right in my own career where I've been in situations that don't even have Slack, like don't even have an IM or anything. And yet it's still a crisis culture. It's still this culture of extreme urgency, and places that do Slack really well. I think actually Morning Brew is one of those places.
Yeah.
And so I wonder like what like beyond that is actually causing it. And I feel like it's this inability to prioritize effectively from the top down.
Yeah, and the other thing I had on my list of like the why is I also think maybe our generation, millennials, we shifted to this like mission focused work where like it was really important that the work you do feel important. And like you couldn't just like sell socks. The socks also somehow had to be changing the world. Like every company's mission statement was like, we will make the world better. And it's like, brother, you're making like shoes. Like, no, you're not. Just like give up.
But then that makes sense.
But that bleeds down to everything you do then. It's not like, okay, there's a great article in the Washington Post about this kind of emergency culture, workplace crisis culture. And one of the sayings was like, it's PR, not the ER.
Right.
Or it's HR, not the ER. Like there are
such a good
serious
slogan,
occupations that this is a crisis. Someone is bleeding on the table. Like we need to help this person. That's a crisis.
Yeah.
Hey, like if we don't get to this right now, like we can reboot Stripe at 10 a.m. and fix it tomorrow morning. Like that isn't a crisis. And I do think that this idea that every company has to be changing the world and have this lofty mission statement bleeds down to everything you do. And it's easy to be like, oh, wow, this is more important than it actually is.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely true of like early millennial work, but I think that isn't the case as much anymore. What I think is more the case is from an individual level, like I want to feel important. Like I want to feel like what I'm doing is important, maybe not to like the global scale, like I'm making a sock and it's like changing the world, but it's like my contribution to this company matters. I am important. If I didn't exist, if I wasn't at this company, like it would fall apart.
Yeah.
And so I feel like some of that is also like self-driven.
Very interesting. Like you're like, if my work isn't like urgent and important, then I'm not
like,
important.
why am I then? I'm not important. And then why am I here?
Yeah. It's a great point. I think that's also maybe backed by a general outlook that maybe early career employees have who went through COVID, have seen the like wreck that COVID did on the global economy, right now are sitting in like a very confusing market. We're not sure if a recession's happening in some sectors or not. Yeah. And like the idea that like it's a little scary. And so like you feel this pressure to be always on because you don't want to lose your job and end up, in a worse spot.
I think that's another element, right? Yeah. It's like, do I want to feel important or do I want to feel secure? I think are two like different ways to get to the same, like I need to react to this immediately.
Yeah.
I also think it could be like boss driven, it's not necessarily just you.
Well, I want to talk about boss driven because I want to talk about anecdotes from our own career. And I know maybe you've had some experiences where this was rampant. Before we go there though, it's not just anecdotes. Microsoft came out with this work trends index report. And some of the stats in here, I think underscore this idea that this is like happening when you even go into the data. So 1 in 3 knowledge workers now say that it is impossible to keep up with all that's going on at work. Late night meetings on Microsoft's platform are up 16% year over year. And the average worker gets over 250 interruptions and between 1 and 2 pings every minute, which is like crazy. Like there is just all of these rings, these pings, these distractions. They're calling it the infinite workday. And I think that contributes to this workplace crisis culture. So now let's get to anecdotes, where in your career have you seen this affect you?
Well, it's affected me my entire career, right? And I'm sure many of you have the same experience, but my first job was very urgent. Everything was urgent. Everything was important. There was like,
You felt that way, or like you were in the ER and
no. It felt that way.
Okay.
It was not actually urgent. So just to give a little bit of background on what equity research is. So
I never thought those words would come out of this
just
podcast.
to get a little bit. So basically equity research, which is what I was working in, has quarters. So when a company is public, they have to report quarterly as of right now, their earnings. So how did the last quarter go? So there's earnings season. Our work was pretty standard. I wouldn't say 9 to 5, but I would say like 8 to 7.
Yeah.
During the normal non-earnings times. And during earnings season, it was like cuckoo bananas, like could be like 4 a.m. some days when companies reported before the open, you had to prepare for it, whatever. Or like you could be working until 2 a.m. if they reported after the close. And because it's earnings season, you could have 10, 12 companies all reporting within the span of 2 weeks. You're like driving like yourself crazy, basically. Yeah. So this happened to me. It was very, very urgent. It was very stressful. Like you had to get a ton of high accuracy work done very quickly. Mm-hmm. That was urgent. And that was for that like situation. It was important.
I was going to say like what you're describing seems like, no, that is urgent.
It is urgent and it is important.
Yeah.
Again, does it really matter? Like, no. But
well, it's just
within the
confines,
informed
about the global economy.
Sure, but keeping our hedge funds informed.
Yeah.
But like within that context, it was urgent and it was important. And I remember so specifically, it was probably like my first year. So let's say it was my fourth earnings, mm-hmm. and we got a report out at 2 a.m. And there's like one extra step once you report, like you have to then send it to compliance. And then compliance approves it, and then it goes out.
Okay.
We never had any problems with compliance. I fell asleep after submitting that report to compliance. And at 3 a.m., I got an email with 2 questions of like something I needed to fix.
Yeah.
But I was asleep. My boss.
You were sleeping at 3 a.m.?
I know.
They should have fired you on the spot.
Well.
That's crazy.
I remember this was like the moment that broke me where I was like, this is not for me. I need to get out. Was my boss caught it because, I don't know, he was up or whatever at 5 a.m. Mm-hmm. And so he caught it and he fixed it. And I woke up at 6 a.m. preparing for the next round of, earnings. And he was so mad at me. And he was like, I can't believe you missed this. This is extremely important that this went out first and it didn't go out first. Because there's a million shops that are putting stuff out.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm so sorry I fell asleep. And he was like, have you considered sleeping on a chair? So you're more uncomfortable, so you wake up more frequently to check your phone to make sure there's no emails.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, okay.
Yeah, like you're like, this is not for me.
Like, yeah, we're not saving lives.
Kind of a decent strategy.
It is a decent strategy if that matters to you.
Yeah. But do you think like, I guess, would there have been a better way for your boss to like approach that season? Because it does feel like this is urgent and important. Again, in grounding it in like the work that this company does. Yeah. Would you have appreciated a different way to like go about this? Like, could there have been like a day shift and a night shift, or like, one of you covers the 3 a.m. emails like every so often? I don't know. Sure.
Yes. I mean, I think there was plenty of different ways. First of all, it was like, it really felt like it was the end of the world.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think things can be urgent and important and not be emergencies and not be crises. Mm-hmm. Because
I think this is just a good point. Like, just to double down on that, like the way you communicate it, even after the fact, matters.
Yeah.
Like, hey, like you fell asleep at 3 a.m. happens to the best of us.
Right.
Like that's, humans have been sleeping around that time since the beginning of ever. And so like expressing that like there's an understanding there, but also that like we need to find a sustainable way to like respond to compliance at 3 a.m.
Right.
Feels like that is how that situation should have been approached.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember just like sobbing at my desk. Like, this is the worst thing. I am the worst person in the world. And also, fuck you for telling me to sleep on a chair.
Yeah, that's crazy. That should not be in the employee handbook.
It was really, really frustrating. And for me, that's when I was like, okay, this urgency is like, there's a difference between urgency and emergency.
Yeah.
And like,
ooh.
That was a bar that I just dropped out of my head. And it doesn't need to cross that line.
Yeah.
Have you experienced anything like that before?
I would say I'll take that question a slightly different way, like a classic politician. I'll just say what I want to say. I feel like I am an impatient person in general. Like I don't like unresolved conflict. And I think that is both a strength and a weakness. We've talked about this on the podcast before. Like I do just believe in traits. And in certain contexts, they can be really, really helpful. And in certain contexts, they can be really damaging. And it just depends on the context. I am not someone who likes unresolved conflict. I'm an impatient person. If something like isn't working, I want to go fix it right away, or I want someone to go fix it right away. I think that can be good for the most part. And I do think that like in general, a business that moves fast, sees a problem, fixes the problem right away, like will come out on top overall with a lot of different caveats. Now, where that can be a weakness is I've heard this feedback from direct reports. Like I think this is something that I need to continuously work on and like remember is that like in my messaging, I'm not saying, and I expect this to be done by X date, or like I'm not giving them a sense of how urgent or important it is. And so if I'm like identifying problems or opportunities for us to go jump on, it's not clear how they should prioritize that. And then I'm creating this sense that you're talking about where like everything feels urgent or important, or you don't have a framework to decide what is urgent and important. And that can feel overwhelming. And so, I think that is a weakness of mine that I need to work on in some cases, which is communicating that to others. Like when it's in my head, I get it. When I'm communicating to others, I need to express how urgent and how important things are.
And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show. That's really interesting to me because I feel like that level of urgency is not like crisis culture necessarily. Like, I think we've talked about this specifically in our agency episode, which is like, agency is the ability to like see a problem and get it done and like remove barriers.
Yeah.
Even if those barriers may be structural or bureaucratic or like political, and like blowing past those.
Yeah.
And I think that the like negative side of agency is this crisis culture. And I think it's like, it can be such a good tool to use urgency to get stuff done, to have high standards and high expectations.
Yeah.
And like, yes, perhaps. I think something that I do poorly is I do the opposite, where I'll be like, immediately no rush.
Oh, yeah.
This is, don't worry about this. It's just something that I'm working on. I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah. The building's on fire. You're like, but firefighters, like, don't literally
worry.
Finish your sandwich.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. Chill. But I'm like, because I'm trying to be like, I want this to fit into your schedule. I don't want to seem too demanding. Like, can we prioritize this next week? Like, I know it's only Tuesday, but like, what if we get it done by next Thursday?
Yeah.
Instead of being like, this is when I need it. This is what's important. So I think there's this like happy middle in between us.
Definitely. And yeah, I think you're spot on. And it comes down to, well, one, I think if you are managing someone or you're in a leadership position, you have to understand like what you say. It might like if the CEO of a company says something, it might be like a one-off statement from them that they're not even like, they didn't even think about in advance. But other people, and I feel like particularly junior level employees, like they hear the CEO say something, they're like, that's important automatically.
Right.
And so I think it's just understanding that like you have to be a really excellent communicator if you are a manager or you are a leader, because people will color in the lines if you don't provide like very specific directions around that. The second thing is I think you have to understand who you're communicating to. To your point, like some people you might know if you tell them to do something, they will drop everything and go do it.
Right.
And you like you don't actually want them to do that. So you have to tell them like this is important but not urgent. Think about this for a couple days. Send me an email next week with like your outline of what you want to do. And then other people, like, if you don't increase the temperature a little bit, it will never get done.
Yeah.
And when you early hedge with those people and you're like, don't worry about it though, they're never going to get back to you.
That's true.
So it's really understanding who you're talking to and like making sure that the message lands in a way that's going to resonate with them the most.
Yeah, I like that. And I think like urgency is a tool. And I think that it is, when it's overused is when it becomes this crisis culture. When the expectations aren't clearly outlined, that's when every single ping becomes, I need to drop everything and do this.
Yep.
And I think that that being said, like urgency can also help move things along. Like this actually does have to get done. And like we've talked about like the eustress curve and like the, power of constraints and the power of like positive stress.
Yep.
Like all those things are true. Like if there was no urgency, nothing would get done.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do we balance those two things?
Yeah.
And not have toxic workplaces on either end?
It's a great point. And there's a great book that you should go read, Emotional Intelligence.
I don't know. I don't know which book you're talking about.
You don't know the book that's in my head? It's by Daniel Goleman.
Okay.
And the name escapes me now. So we'll have to link it in the show notes or something. But anyway, he goes into the 5 different types of leadership. And one of them is like kind of the authoritarian.
Yeah.
That's like, do this and do it now. And I think a lot of people assume that never works. And in fact, it does work. And it only works in times of legitimate crisis.
Like actual crisis.
Like a ship is sinking and we don't have time to like, all right, let's take a vote. Should we like fill that hole or like should we tape that hole or like how do we not get the sink to ship? It's like, no, like I'm in charge. Do that. It's going to save lives. Like that is the only time where that actually is effective. If you deploy that leadership style again and again and again, what you get is burnout because like legitimately then everything feels like a crisis and people cannot handle that. So really being thoughtful about how you deploy these different leadership styles is really important.
It's giving boy who cried wolf. That's what it feels like.
Yes.
So high quality leadership tips here.
Yes.
Don't cry wolf.
Let's break down like other tips and tactics. So if you're either leading a team and you want to avoid a workplace crisis culture, or you're at a company and as an IC and you want to make sure that like you're navigating this workplace crisis culture appropriately, what advice or strategies do you have?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 different things, right? There's when your direct boss is unable to prioritize effectively downward or unable to communicate downward. And then there's when the entire workplace has this crisis culture. Mm-hmm. When the boss is a little bit more crisis focused, the line, I have these things on my plate, what should I replace this with, is so useful.
Yes.
Because it reminds them that you're already busy. They're throwing something into the mix requiring you to drop other things that they've probably already requested. So saying, I have X, Y, and Z to do today or this week. My plate is already full. Which of these things should I replace with the task you're wanting me to do now? Allows the boss to prioritize themselves. Mm-hmm. And they may not realize that what they're asking you to do when they shoot you a slack about something that's urgent.
100%. Like that is, you have to get so fluent in talking in trade-offs. Like I could do X, but I'd have to deprioritize Y. Do you agree with that assessment? Yeah. That is going to save you so many headaches. And I think just in general, this idea of like finding tools that allow you to prioritize effectively. So whether it's talking in trade-offs, whether it's an Eisenhower matrix, and you ask your boss like on a like between urgent and important, where does this fall? Or doing Amanda Getz, who we've talked about on this podcast before, had this like 3 to-dos today, where like every morning she'd be like, these are the 3 things that need to get done that I'm prioritizing. And if like, urgent slacks come in, like doesn't matter. These are the 3 things I have to do. I'll get to those later. That can also be a really effective way to make sure you're not deprioritizing work that actually is important over the long run.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think that an important caveat to all of these things is like, these are the most effective when you truly are super busy.
Yeah.
Like when you actually do have things that you're going to have to deprioritize in order to like get that other thing done. Mm-hmm. And where I think like, oh yeah, I'm ignoring all these urgent slacks because I'm working on these 3 things is super, super useful when you're like, you have a crystal clear ability to understand the long-term goals and like to prioritize effectively. And there's nobody that's going to like penalize you for doing that.
That's right.
So I think especially if you're an IC, like you have to actually be reasonable. Like if things are urgent and your boss is like throwing you stuff and you're like, well, I had a free afternoon, but like, I don't like this crisis culture. That's fair, but also you probably should do it. You have the time,
Yeah.
So I think it's like, let's be reasonable as well. But when you're using that, it's a very, very powerful tool.
Totally.
Now, if the culture is crazy and the culture is truly from the top down of crisis, I've seen this before at a previous job where like the head, person would read a business book and then completely change everything about operations in the company.
They'd read the book that I recommended.
Yeah, that one.
I thought of it, Primal Leadership.
Nice.
I had to save myself.
There we go.
Keep
There
going.
we go. So, reads Primal Leadership, reads like, what was it called? Extreme Ownership by Jocko or whatever. And it's like, we're changing how this team is run.
Reads Eat, Pray, Love, and like, now you're eating pasta every day for lunch.
What's going on? Like, why are there prayer beads everywhere? No. But it's like, okay, and then all of a sudden I've been inspired as the leader and I'm like, this is the right way to structure the team. I'm going to change everything. Like that is unpleasant for everyone else if it's happening more frequently than like twice a year.
Yeah. You have to understand that like change is a bit of a tax and people can only take so much of it. And so there is this comfort in like consistency.
Yeah.
And you should be aware of that as a leader.
Exactly. And so if that's not the case, right, if you have a leader that gets very excited by like new topics, maybe it's like, oh, I think we should be focusing on this metric because that's the thing that's going to like get us to $1 million in revenue. And then like 2 weeks later, it's like, actually, it's this metric. Well, I've been optimizing for this metric. That is very, very hard. It basically feels like you're like on a ship in a storm, right? If we're talking about the ship sinking.
Yep.
So what do you do? Like, it's kind of tough. There's not a lot that you can do as an individual contributor that's not like going to this person and being like, hey, dude, like chill, because that's not going to work. That's not going to be effective. So the two things that I have here is first, can you reduce your stress personally? Like, can you figure out how to operate in this environment, assuming it continues? If the answer is yes, then maybe you kind of do short-term mitigation strategies, talking to your individual boss, seeing what they can do to protect you. Figuring out how you can prioritize better and how you can have better boundaries. If the answer is no, then maybe it's time to look for a different team, look for a different job. And that's not like ideal, especially right now, but it is true. Like if you're in a crisis culture, like it is really jarring and you will burn out.
Yeah. I think that is the underlying point is you can only be in a crisis for so long until you do burn out. And so if you're seeing this, like you've tried all these mitigation techniques, they're not working, it isn't sustainable. And so you should hopefully have a backup plan in handy. I want to go back to the performance metrics you were talking about, because I think that's actually one of my tactics is to get very clear on how you're going to be judged and how you're going to be evaluated when your performance review comes up. If you don't understand what matters to your role and your boss does not explain that to you, then actually you have no ability to prioritize effectively because you don't know what you're actually prioritizing for. And so having a conversation with your boss, like when it comes to mid-year reviews and end-of-year reviews, if you had to pick the 3 most important metrics that I'm going to be judged on, what are those metrics and what should I be aiming for? Then when a task comes in, you can understand, okay, if I actually focus on this, does it move those metrics? If it doesn't, have that conversation. Hey, like, I hear you. I'm a bit slammed in this task you gave me. I don't think it ladders up to the most important metrics that I'm going to be judged on. Like, is that accurate? And then you have a way to communicate this with your manager that I think is really, really important. The other thing that I think is a big hack is just time boxing. And so like the great, like saying of like politics is like, don't show me your campaign speeches, like show me your budget. I think that can be applied to work, which is like, don't tell me what you're working on, show me your calendar. And if you actually are very effective at time boxing, then you build in these blockers where you can focus on the long term, the strategic, the deep thinking. And if you don't put that on, like your calendar basically becomes other people's priorities of them throwing time on.
Right.
So I've seen time boxing be very effective in my own career. And to go back to Amanda Getz, she actually put a time box on that was like admin tasks or like little small stuff that piled up that you just like never want to get to, but like it kind of sits in your mind and like bums you out. She would put an hour on her calendar that was just like go through those tasks and she would write them down. She would get them out of their head and then attack them. So maybe you have at like the end of the day, a 1 hour block that's like respond to like what other people think is important. And if something comes in, you just are like, you hold it, you have time later to respond to it. I think just understanding when you're going to get to it will lower your stress levels as well.
Yeah, I think that's true. I get it. I think if you like I agree with you.
Okay.
If you have the ability to wait.
Yeah.
Right. If like you're not going to, again, be negatively penalized for waiting until the end of the day to respond to something, I think that's great.
Well, and you could make those expectations known. Yeah. Like I will respond to all of my Slacks, but I'm not going to respond right away. Mm-hmm. I'm going to respond at least by, 4 p.m. I've actually seen people, this might be overkill, but I'm using it as like an illustrative example where they have in their like email signature, like I do not respond to emails like as they come in. I block an hour every day to get through as many as possible. So like you'll get an email within 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah.
Again, illustrative example, but I think that expectation setting is so important. The way I've seen some companies do this that I think is really impressive is they will establish like no meeting Mondays or no meeting Wednesdays, where like they're like, those are the days for deep work. We will not have any meetings. Or they'll do like no Slack mornings.
Right.
You are not allowed to send a message on Slack in the morning. And then again, it sets the expectation that that is a time for deep strategic work. I think that's really, really valuable. And, you know, that also extends to like, what is our rule on Slacks post 6 p.m.? What is our rule at the company on emails on the weekend? Like, if you're going to do them, I think you have to have a very clear set of expectations around them, because people will interpret that very differently. And it's easy for someone to feel like, okay, if I do get an email on the weekend, does that mean I have to respond? Now I'm checking my email on weekend. They're showing up burnt out. They're feeling this crisis culture, and it's not productive.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think especially if you're like higher up and you have the ability to kind of set those expectations and build that culture, you should absolutely be doing that. And one additional, like maybe slightly too tactical tip that I've seen some of our coworkers here at Morning Brew do that I really love is like using it sparingly, but taking it seriously. Using the Slack status. So you know how you can have a little emoji next to
Oh
your
yeah,
name?
I have a little camera right now saying recording per
Right.
last email.
Exactly. So people know like you're unavailable right now,
Yeah.
basically. When there's like certain parts of the month, some people will be like in focused work, like unable to respond today. And so it shows like they're pulling like very urgent and important data. They cannot be responding to things. It might take them 12 hours to respond to your Slack, or schedule it for tomorrow because they're working on this big thing. And so I think especially if you're not doing that like every single day.
Yeah.
I think when you like make it very pointed and you stick to it, then people respect it. You are also setting that expectation, even in a crisis culture. It's like, oh, she's grinding. Like I don't have to worry about that, you know?
And how fun is it to pick a cute little emoji?
It's true.
For when you do the Slack status updates. It's like half the reason I keep doing it.
It's so
like,
fun.
What emoji am I dropping today? Space Invader? Cowboy? Like there's so many options. It's quite fun.
Yeah, it is.
The last thing I want to end on, which is maybe a bit of like a hot take, is we talked a lot about urgency, and I think that urgency in some ways has become the new procrastination, where, and I think this like is important, that if you are just doing everything that comes in, it can feel like you're achieving a lot. It's kind of a good feeling when like someone slacks you and you respond right away.
Yeah.
Or someone's like, hey, can you drop everything and do this? And then you do it and you're like, yeah, what's up? I'm productive. What's good? And it feels good, but like it actually is not good for the business long term.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is like you're abandoning these longer, more complex projects that do actually require thinking. Like breaking news, like hard stuff you have to think about and you have to plan and you have to like get into the details. That doesn't happen immediately. And so it's just like a warning for you listening. There is this sex appeal, like fun, I'm productive, of doing everything that is urgent and everything that comes in. And you can get in a trap of feeling very productive, but not moving the needle on anything important. And I think that's going to hurt you long-term in your career. So like take all of our tactics of how to like create the situation and the calendar to actually tackle those big projects, because that I think is what actually matters. And it's very easy to get caught up in this kind of urgency loop forever.
I really like that tip. That was great.
I love it. That was genuine. I can tell when you're kind of fake gassing me up.
No. I'm gassing you up for real. That was good.
I love it. All right. Well, I think that's a great way to end then.
Perfect.
Should we roll the credits?
Let's do it.
Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Yuchana Ogu.
Brittany DeTaco is our audio engineer.
And our president is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Stay out of the crisis, everyone.